Hey guys, it's your favorite flight attendant, Erica from America. Welcome to my channel, Erica Reacts, where I try to react to travel stuff from a flight attendant's point of view and try to add some of my own advice, some of my own stories. I mean, flight attendants have the craziest stories. What I'm going to start with today is this one right here, the Portable Professional Travel Tips with Megan. Best plane seats revealed and which to avoid at all cost. She did this one a year ago, 1.4 million views, over 15,000 savvy travelers. Let's jump over to her channel real quick just to get a little bit more on Megan. Like, who is this girl giving this advice? Currently, she has 282,000 subscribers. She's done 461 videos. Very impressive. I cannot remember if I watched her stuff before or not, but looks like she's got a TSA airport security guide for 2025. And I like this part. I've taken well over 300 flights and countless trips in the last decade, and I'm here to help you also feel confident about your travels while making the most of every trip. We'll see if she's right. Let's see if I agree with her. I probably don't, because I have my own opinion on what are the best seats on a plane, but let's see what she's got.
In today's video, we'll dive into the best seats in economy and the seats that you should be avoiding at all costs. I'll also explain why my favorite seat after hundreds of flights, the aisle seat, is no longer my top pick. Let's kick things off with the pros and the cons of the aisle, middle, and window seats. For
Okay,
window seats, the pros include a nice view during takeoff and landing, extra support since you can lean against the side of the plane, which might make it easier to get comfortable and fall asleep. There are also fewer interruptions since you can stay seated while others in your row get up and down. Sitting at the window also means you have less exposure to others, which could reduce your chances of getting sick. The cons of being seated by the window include limited mobility since it's more challenging to get up for the restroom
that's
or
true.
to stretch your legs since you'll need to ask the passengers in the middle and the aisle seat to let you out. And sometimes your seatmates are going to be sleeping, which means you'll need to wake them up or awkwardly shimmy past them in order to get out. And then sometimes they are awake, but they seem to think it's okay to make you do this instead of getting out of their seat. We do not like those passengers. Please don't be one.
Right.
Window seats also tend to be colder, and then deplaning might take slightly longer, especially if the passengers in the middle and aisle seat of your row decide to take their time getting off the plane. As for the aisle seats, these have historically been my favorite.
Okay, hold up. There's one thing that she didn't mention that might be of interest to you. Whoever sits in the window controls the blind, period. Just on note. I remember one time talking to my mom about it. My mom was like, why do these people take the window seat and then they close the blinds? And it's like, well, they want to sleep and they get to control the blinds. If they want to watch the view, they open the blinds and they don't give a crap if the people next to them want to sleep. If you sit in the window seat, you control the window shade. She's also saying that the window is often cold. I find it the opposite, actually. The window is often the hottest, especially in the summer, because the sun will hit it. And a lot of times we ask you as flight attendants, please close your shades because we don't want that extra heat coming into the plane. So I kind of disagree with her on that. I will be honest with you, for me, my favorite is always the window seat, just because the fuselage of the plane is slightly curved, so that gives you a little bit extra room to move over. In the aisle, obviously, you can move in the aisle, but then you get hit by everybody that walks by, including the cart, especially if you're sleeping. So I prefer the window just because I can lean into the fuselage and get just that little bit of extra room, prop your head on it, and you get control of the window shade, which is great because, like I said, not just for sleeping, but if you want to watch a movie, you don't necessarily want the glare from the window on your video. That's something to keep in mind. You get control of the window shade when you sit in the window seat.
Since I love having the option to get up without having to ask permission or to awkwardly climb over someone. Aisle seats are convenient for frequent restroom breaks and stretching
True.
your legs.
True.
You can even briefly extend your legs into the aisle if no one is coming by. Don't abuse this since
Also, just keep in mind, for taxi takeoff and landing, nobody's walking through the aisle. The flight attendants are usually seated, so we're not going to go down there and be like, hey, put your feet back under your seat. So if you put your feet in the aisle during taxi takeoff and landing, nobody cares, and you don't have to worry about getting stepped on. It's only once we level off and people start moving around that you don't want to do that.
you are not technically supposed to be blocking the aisle, but little appropriately timed leg stretches into the aisle should be okay. Just watch for carts. Aisle seats also mean faster disembarking upon landing, and it's easier to evacuate in the emergency.
One more thing to keep in mind, if you are going to sit in the aisle seat, do yourself a huge freaking favor. From one flight attendant to a passenger, wear white shoes. I know that sounds crazy. Like, wear sneakers. Don't wear black shoes because most flight attendants turn the lights way down. We want to try to force people to sleep. And most of the carpets on the planes are like a dark navy blue. They're dark color because that hides stains, dropped soda, the messes that people make on the plane. So pretty much all carpets are dark. And if you're wearing dark pants and dark shoes, we can't see your legs. And it's almost guaranteed we'll hit you with that card, especially if you fall asleep because we can't see. It blends in with the carpet. So do yourself a favor. If you're going to sit in the aisle, at least put on white sneakers or light colored pants or something so that we notice that your leg is in the aisle.
If safety is a concern. Aisle seats can also
That's
be
true.
better for working since you can extend your arm into the aisle if you do decide to work on a laptop. And I do also have a sneaky hack for aisle seats that I will share at the end.
Ooh,
As for the
I'm
cons,
interested.
seatmates will disturb you since you will need to stand up
Very true.
whenever they want to get out of the row of seats. And it is your responsibility if you
But that can be a relief because a lot of times you want to get up and stretch, and it's a great excuse. A lot of flight attendants, they just want you to stay seated all the time, and if people are getting in and out, then you gotta stand up, so it's also a great excuse for getting out.
are sitting in the aisle to stand up, please don't be that person that ends up leaning back and making someone awkwardly climb over you.
I
Not
agree with
cool.
that.
Aisle seats also leave you more exposed to other passengers and crew members, which could increase your chances of catching a bug or even just getting bumped by people as they move through the cabin. Flight crew may also need to lean over you to be able to serve those in the middle and the window seat of your row. And when you're seated,
There's no may, we will lean over you. We're gonna reach across you to hand out the drinks, the snacks, we're also gonna reach across you to pick up trash. So, yeah, we'll lean in front of you. We're gonna, like, get in your space if you're on the aisle seat.
in the aisle, you have no plane side to sleep against. Just another passenger, which I do not recommend sleeping on. Despite these cons, aisle seats have always been my preference and what I would recommend to any nervous flyers since they feel less claustrophobic than middle and window seats.
It's
But
true.
things are changing, which we will get into next, right after we talk about the pros and the cons of the middle seats.
Other thing to note real quick, when you're in the aisle seat, depending on which way you lean, you are most likely going to have your head start going that way as you fall asleep, and you probably will fall asleep. So you are gonna wake up with the crick in your neck and the opposite. Like, if you're facing the plane and on the aisle seat on this side, your neck's gonna go this way, you're gonna get the crick in the neck that way. If you're sitting on the aisle seat over here, you're most likely gonna put your head this way and you're gonna get the crick in the neck here. That may not mean anything to you, but for those of you that are used to chronic pain, especially in your neck, I have a hard time turning my head this way a lot of times. My neck always goes out on this side. So a lot of times I usually try to avoid the D seat because I don't want to stretch out that side. It generally hurts. I usually go for the F seat on the window so I can lean my head against the wall. But if you have problems like when you're driving and you turn your head to look over your shoulder and you feel that pull there, you might want to consider that too. Here's the other thing to consider where if you're traveling with anybody, like, which side of you are they sitting? For example, as a flight attendant, we hate sitting in the jump seat because they're hard as rock. They're very uncomfortable, and you can't sit in them for large periods of time. So a lot of times the gate agents will empty out that back row for us, especially on long flights, if there's the room for it. And so then we'll sit in the back seats and talk to each other across the aisle. And every time I sit in the C seat and I'm talking to the flight attendant over that way, I always get the crick in the neck. Same thing if I'm like on a window A seat or an aisle D seat. If I'm turning this way and talking to the passengers on my right, my neck starts to hurt faster than if I were to talk to passengers on the left. If you choose an aisle seat, if you have any kind of neck pain, you're not going to be able to support your head against the wall. And most passengers don't bring neck pillows, to be honest with you. Keep that in mind when you're buying a seat. If you tend to have your neck hurting when you're driving and you look over your shoulder, you will probably want to be on the left side of the plane, unless you're traveling with somebody. You're going to want to put the person you're traveling with on your left so that you don't get the crick in that neck or vice versa.
Sleek cons. These cons include limited space being sandwiched between two strangers, no window view, no plane side to lean against, and then still having to ask the passenger in the aisle seat to move for you to get up. It's like combining the worst aspects of the aisle and the window seat into one. And usually I would say the only pro of being in the middle seat is that the person that is seated in the middle gets first dibs on both of the armrests beside them. But here is where things get interesting. A major airline just announced a big change to their economy boarding process and will be implementing Wilma. Not that Wilma. United Airlines' new Wilma boarding process stands for window, middle, and aisle. This is the order that economy passengers will be boarding the flight. I'm still not sure how the L fits in. After first class passengers and those with some elite status board, anyone that is seated in economy with a window seat or an exit row seat will get on the plane, followed by passengers with middle seats, and then those with an aisle seat will be the last to board. It sounds good to be in an aisle seat because you get to spend the least amount of time on the plane. But no, it is not good, and here's why. Overhead bin space is available on a
I don't know about that boarding process in particular. I don't know how they're gonna manage to implement that if they are putting that into place. Because honestly, everybody rushes the gate as soon as their group number is called. They would have to strategically put down a group number for each set of passengers in each zone. And that could be a real problem because people tend to be jerks. I know this sounds crazy, but a lot of people get on a plane and they stick their bag in the first spot they see overhead, and then they walk to the back of the plane to go grab their seat, especially people that have a hard time bringing their bags with them, like dragging their bags down the aisle. That's generally why they board the planes from front to back, because then, the people in the back can't shove their bags in the front, forcing the people in the front to put their bags in the back. So I don't know how they're going to implement that. That would be interesting to see. What I do know, though, about the middle seat, yes, it's usually considered courtesy to give up those armrests. it's, sure, it's supposed to be courtesy, but it doesn't happen. Especially if you're sitting between men, especially wide-shouldered men. Wide-shouldered men can't really control where they put their arms. As a flight attendant, I often have to fly in the middle seat. At our company, we call it deadheading. Basically, what you do is they want you to work a particular flight, and maybe another flight attendant took the plane out, and for some reason they're not taking the plane back. Then maybe they got reassigned and they went somewhere else with a different plane. Then they'll fly us as a passenger out to that particular city to take over the flight, and we're in uniform. And that's always a hassle because if you're in uniform, everybody thinks that they can talk disrespectfully to you. I've literally been told to shut up by a passenger that I was sitting next to when I told them that they had to get off the phone. And I was sitting as a passenger, and I was kind of like, you have no idea that I can put you on the no-fly list, even as a passenger. So if you see a flight attendant or pilot sitting in a seat on a plane in uniform, we have the right to put you on the no-fly list. But that's not the point. The point is when they sit me in the middle seat, everybody thinks that they don't have to listen to me, and then they take the armrests, and then I sit with my arms like this across my chest for a couple of hours. If you're traveling with anybody who's a man or a woman, you kind of want the skinny person in the middle. I know that sounds like that sucks, but it's true. Every time I sit between two wide-shouldered guys, I'm like, oh, no, please change me somewhere else, because they're going to take the armrests, and I'm going to have nothing to say about that.
first come, first serve basis.
That's
So
very
if
true.
you are in economy and you choose an aisle seat, you are going to be the last passenger on the plane, and there will likely not be any space left for your carry-on luggage. That means that you will be forced to check your carry-on suitcase and have it thrown around by airline staff and then wait for it to, hopefully, arrive on the luggage belt in one piece and in a timely manner. If you are flying with United Airlines, consider opting for a window or a middle seat instead of the aisle seat. I'll leave a link in the description with all of the info on United Airlines' new boarding process.
Just so you know, she did this a year ago. I have not heard any chatter about that at all. I'm O'Hare based, which is largely United based, and I haven't heard any of the people talking about that. And like I said, that'd be really hard for them to enforce.
And once you've finished learning all of the intimate details of Wilma, it is also important to remember that where you sit on the plane goes well beyond just choosing a window, middle, or aisle seat. When it comes to the right or the left side of the plane, choose based on the side that you sleep on if you plan to sit at a window and lean against the side wall. If you are sitting in an aisle and want to get work done, then choose the side of the plane that allows you to extend your dominant arm into the aisle.
That's a good tip.
And if you have
It's a
no
really good tip.
preference, opt for the right side of the plane as it tends to be less occupied. And more important than the side of the plane that you choose to
Opt for the right side of the plane, which tends to be less occupied. I don't think I agree with that. I think generally they're occupied equally. The part about the dominant arm, very good tip though. I agree with that one. Most people are right-handed, so it would be better to be in that C seat if you're on the computer and you're right-handed, in the D seat if you're left-handed. That's a really, really good tip.
sit on is whether you choose to sit near the front, middle, or the back of the cabin.
I got
The front
opinions.
of the plane means faster boarding, which could secure you overhead bin space, and faster deplaning at the end of the flight, which is especially useful for tight connections or getting to the front of immigration lines. The front of the plane is also served first, so your meal
That's true.
choice will likely
That's
be
true.
in stock. And then the front can be a little bit quieter in comparison to the back of the plane where
That's
the
true.
engines are located.
Not just the engines are located, that's generally where people with children end up. They usually end up in the back of the plane. I couldn't even tell you why, but I think a lot of parents like to put themselves at the back of the plane because they feel it'll disturb the other passengers less. As far as engine noises, that's pretty much the same throughout the plane, on any plane. I haven't noticed a difference, and I've been on all kinds of planes. Yeah.
Can be a little bit quieter in comparison to the back of the plane where the engines are located. But while you might avoid engine noises, the front of the plane is also where parents with babies and toddlers tend to be seated, and it also just tends to be busier than the back of the plane in general. I personally prefer the engine noises that you get at the back of the cabin as opposed to the people noises that you get at the front. If you also dislike people, I'm joking, mostly, then closer to the back might be a better option. You definitely have a better chance at getting a row to yourself when you are near the
Yes,
back of the plane
that's
cabin.
true.
But depending on which airline you fly with, sitting near the back might mean that you board last and then you don't have any overhead bin space for your
Mm,
carry on. The back of the plane also tends to be a bumpier ride in comparison
true,
to the middle of the plane where you
true.
are over the
Mhm.
wings. But despite the bumps, studies show that passengers at the back of the plane tend to have a better chance of surviving in the case of a plane crash. Before you make any decisions, we need to cover the worst seats on the plane, which are in the back.
I have a lot
The
of
very back,
opinions.
to be more specific. The seats that you should absolutely never pick on a plane for any reason are those in the very back row, since they do not recline and are right beside
True,
the bathrooms.
true.
Stinky. Other seats to avoid include those directly in front of an exit row, since they may have limited or no recline as well.
That's
The
true.
tool that I am using here is a free website called SeatGuru, where you can type in your exact flight number and it will show you the best and the worst seats. It's great to check because even random economy seats, like these by the window in row 33, might have defects like a misaligned window. I'll leave a link to SeatGuru in the description if you want to check it out for your next flight. A specialty type of seat to be aware of are bulkhead seats. Bulkhead seats are the
Okay, real quick, I've got so much to say on this. On some planes, the back row does recline, and if it does, the nice thing about that is that most flight attendants aren't going to tell you to put your seat up because what we're really concerned about is the safety of the passenger behind you. So if there's no passenger behind you, we don't really care if you're in the back row and your seat can recline and you leave it reclined. Most flight attendants. Some flight attendants are like, absolutely not. As far as the seats in front of an exit row, yeah, those usually don't recline because they want people to be able to get off the plane in an emergency, like really quickly. And they don't want the seat to impede that from happening. So that's very true. Those don't lean back. SeatGuru.com, fantastic for actually helping you find the right seat. But here's what you need to know. On most planes, the front shakes less than the back. It's kind of the tail of the plane that makes the plane wobble, especially on my plane. I always tell the passengers that our plane is like a fishtail in the back, and so it really makes the plane shake side to side in the back. And you can still kind of feel it in the wings, but the front of the plane, they don't feel it as much, especially the pilots. The pilots never really feel turbulence the way that the flight attendant in the back feels it. It's like being on two different planes. Here's the other thing to keep in mind. Are you a cold person or are you a hot person, temperature-wise? On pretty much every plane you go on, the front of the plane is pretty much always colder than the back of the plane. And it's kind of partially because that front door is open longer. So whether it's the winter air that's coming in or the summer air with the air conditioning blowing through and out the door, the front is almost always colder, like in probably 95% of flights, unless like the air conditioning isn't working properly. And like 95% of flights, the front of the plane will be colder and the back will be warmer. So if you are prone to getting too hot or too cold on a plane, that should help you figure out where you want to sit. The farther back you go, the warmer it is. The farther to the front you go, the cooler it is. The other thing too, she was saying about the seats in the back being less full, that's usually very true because most people want to sit at the front of the plane so that they can deplane quickly when they get to their connecting airport. In almost all cases, there's always an empty middle seat towards the back, especially on planes with 3 seats and 3 seats. You'll find more empty middle seats towards the back than you will towards the front. And the nice thing about that is if you pick a window or an aisle, that middle seat will be empty. Like say you take the window seat, somebody takes the aisle seat, the person in the middle, if they're not there, you could put their tray down and both of you can use that tray for your sodas, your drinks, or you could put your laptop on that one and kind of turn sideways and do your typing. One or both of you could put your bags underneath that middle seat. It does give you a lot more room. Whenever I go to pick a seat when I'm deadheading, I will look for the rows that have 2 empty seats, usually like a middle and an aisle or a middle and a window, and I will purposely take either the window or the aisle next to that empty middle seat in hopes that somebody does not put themselves in that middle seat. And then, of course, like I said, I try to do that to the back. From what I've seen on most planes, I see more children towards the back. And a part of me does wonder if the computer sets it that way because when you go to check in, the computer's only going to tell you that certain seats are available, but they kind of block off different seats depending on when you checked in. For example, the other day I was flying with the flight attendant and her and I were deadheading on the same flight. She checked in before me. I forgot to check in. I checked in like 6 or 7 hours later. I went to go change the seat on my airline website and I couldn't change the seat because there was only a handful of seats that were open and none of them were window or aisles, and the computer automatically assigned me an aisle seat. But then she went in to change her seat and it looked like 30% of the plane was open. And I was like, wait, how are you doing that? I had never quite realized because I had never really checked in with somebody else before. But it makes sense because the computer does block off certain seats at certain times. The sooner you check in, the more seat options you have available to you, not only immediately, but you're supposed to check in 24 hours before the flight, and you can change those seats anywhere up to usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours before the flight. So you can continuously check before then to see, did a better seat become available, or did the seat next to you fill up? Are there more empty seats toward the back? And then you could pick something that's more for you. Again, one tip I will always say is always bring layers on a plane. Even though the front of the plane is colder and the back of the plane is warmer, there are flight attendants that will freaking air condition the crap out of those planes because warm planes make people throw up, cold planes make people sleep. So we always want to make the plane as cold as possible so people will generally sleep. That's why we also make the planes dark.
Those found directly behind a wall. Some people love them because you get
Bulkheads.
extra legroom and you don't have anyone reclining into your space since there are no seats in front of you. And then some people hate them since you have no under-seat storage and all of your stuff needs to go in an overhead bin. Oftentimes, the armrests do not go up or down, and they have these flimsy tray tables and TVs that pop out of the
True.
armrest since you
True.
do not have them attached to the seat in front of you. I personally do not like these seats.
I actually do because I always manage to get my bag in the overhead. You get first priority on putting your bag in the overhead when you sit in the bulkheads. The flight attendants will make room for your bags and force the people behind you to take their bags out and put them under the seats. So that's always nice. One of the things that does suck is there's oftentimes a wall on either side of your hips. If you have bigger hips, your butt's going to push on both armrests because that's where the tray tables are. The tray tables generally go out and across. Sometimes there's a monitor that pulls up and then flops sideways, depending on if it's a plane that has a monitor. A lot of the airlines have been trying to get rid of the monitors because they cost too much to repair, and most people watch stuff on their phones and their tablets anyway. But there's a lot of that first row that does have the room where it does give you a little more butt room, but most of the time it doesn't. That's generally where they also put the animals, like the service dogs or a service horse in one case. There's not a lot of room in different places to put the service animals. So that's generally a priority. If you have a problem with dogs, you may not want that row. Another thing to think about is a lot of people like to put their feet on the wall where the bulkhead is. Flight attendants don't necessarily like that. If your flight attendant gives you a warning that they don't like it, then don't press your luck. They'll make you miserable for it. But if you put your feet on the wall and the flight attendant doesn't say or do anything, you're good. If you take your shoes off and put your feet on the wall, that disgusts the crap out of all of us. Don't do that on a plane, especially because we see what goes on that carpet, not just sodas and juice and like other things that people spill, but like people have vomited on the carpet. There have been occasions where people have peed on the carpet. So I don't recommend that you ever go barefoot or in your socks in a plane. But like I said, bulkhead, the nice thing is you can kind of put your feet on the wall, which helps you stretch your legs when you're tired. Also, when you're in air, if you want to take your bag down and put it by your feet, we're okay with that. We only need it in the overhead bin for taxi, takeoff, and landing. So if you want to take your bag down and use it as a footrest, the bulkhead is great because you got the room for it.
Exit row seats also have pros and cons since they have extra legroom and you are in a good spot to evacuate.
You can see the wall right here. that I was talking about, that's usually where the trays are. So again, not much butt room in some of these exit rows. But the nice thing is you do have lots of legroom, and since your bag's right there, you can just pull it over, use it as a footrest. However, this does mean you wouldn't be able to use like a airplane hammock for your feet if you happen to have one. So keep that in mind too if you choose the exit row.
But it is by far the coldest spot on the plane,
Hmm,
and sometimes there's an
not
extra
really.
fee to book an exit row
There
seat.
is an extra
And
fee.
here's one of my favorite hacks if you are flying on a larger plane that happens to have a center row of 3 or
Okay, the reason I say it's not the coldest seat on the plane is because most planes have plug doors, and those exit rows are never open. Like, never, unless it's an actual emergency. So it's generally warmer by the exit seats. If you go to the very back or you go to the very front, those doors get opened all the time for catering and for passengers to come in, but the exit row seats never get opened. They're also plug doors. Imagine you got a hole, and then imagine you have a cork. When you stick a cork through in a wine bottle, the cork is shaped kind of outward, right? Well, the plane doors are kind of like that too. They kind of go outward. So when you stick it from the inside, it's wider on the inside of the plane than on the outside. So it kind of creates a stopping point, and then when they pressurize the plane, it pushes the door even firmer against that hole so that you can't really open it in air, which is kind of the point. So yeah, it's not really colder at all.
4 seats. Selecting a center aisle seat is
Oh,
better than
hate those.
selecting an aisle seat on either side of the plane.
Why?
You could be seated in an aisle seat on one of these center rows and never have to get up for the passengers seated beside you. In comparison to if you are in an aisle seat on one side of the plane, you need to be getting up every single time the window seat or the middle seat passenger decide to get out. A
That's true.
center row aisle
That's true.
seat near the middle of the plane, away from the bathrooms, is my preferred seat. That is assuming I'm not flying with United Airlines and following Wilma boarding protocols. Let us know down in the comments where you hope to sit on your next flight. And then also don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join us back here for more travel tips and hacks next week. Thank you so much for watching and safe travels.
There was one thing that I forgot to say. She said that it's usually busier at the front of the plane versus the back. That's not true. Think about this for just a minute. The front of the plane is first class. Most flight attendants pull the curtain between first class and main cabin, and they don't let main cabin, economy plus, business, whatever you call it, they don't let them come into the first class area to use the first class bathroom at all. They make them go to the bathroom in the back. And there's usually 2 bathrooms in the very far back. So most people tend to go to the back of the plane. Say you have WestJet's 737s, they have up to 189 seats, and I think like 172. Let's just make this easy. Let's say 172 seats. First class is usually anywhere from 12 to 16 seats. We'll say it's 12, which means that there's 160 people behind the curtain. And those 160 people are using the bathrooms in the back, not the front. Only the 12 in first class get to use the bathroom in the front. So generally, most of the time, there are more people in the very, very back of the plane than the front of the plane. So if you're trying to sleep and you're like really close to the bathroom, you probably will hear people talking more. Whereas if you're at the front of the main cabin and you're on the aisle, you're not going to have as many people walking past you to get to the bathroom. You will have a lot less people. So if you really, really like an aisle seat and you're in main cabin and not first class and you don't want to get bumped all the time, again, front of the cabin would be best for that. Back of the cabin, you'll get bumped more often. Colder in the front, warmer in the back. Also, she said that it's generally safer, that you are more likely to survive in an accident in the back. From the accidents that I've seen, the wings pretty much always stay intact. The wings are double, triple, quadruple enforced because that's where most of the weight on the plane is, if that makes sense. You've got the engines, you've got the wings, and those wings are carrying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So they're beyond enforced. In most plane accidents, if you look at it, the body of the plane where the wings are tends to stay intact. There was an accident that happened on Southwest when I first started about 8 years ago. Basically, a piece of the engine broke off, came through the side of the plane, and hit the passenger next to the window. That passenger got sucked out of the window. The people grabbed her, pulled her in, and she ended up having a heart attack and dying. Since then, the airlines have made sure that never happens again. Any plane that has this particular type of engine has to get it ultrasounded every 6 months to make sure that can't happen again. But if you are worried about something like that, the aisle seat would be safer for the wings all the way to the back. So then that way you wouldn't have to worry about that breaking off. Or you could do the window seat from like the wings forward, because that couldn't possibly happen. It would break off and it goes backwards instead of forwards. However, there are planes where the actual engines are on the tail of the plane. Those are usually the smaller planes. And if that's the case, then any seat on that plane is safe. And again, the safest ones would be over the wings. So that's my tip for picking a good seat. I thought this was really good. Here is the link to her next video, 21 things you didn't know you could get on a flight, if you want to go ahead and watch that one. And here's my next video if you want to watch that one too. I hope you guys like this. If you did, subscribe, hit the like button if you liked it, let me know, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!